Alright, I hope everyone is just doing well today. Today we are going to speak about making your own token. Pretty exciting. First off, I'm going to kind of try to break down a little bit more than the normal, just so people who are pretty brand new into any of this stuff can really kind of get more of a grasp on it, because I know sometimes it can be super confusing, especially if you're not really familiar with any of the blockchain and just kind of like what smart contracts are and such. So start this off. Let's build something out. So what we're going to basically do is build out a contract. And with this contract, we are going to make it a basic token. Now with the basic token, we're going to be able to come up first with an address. And the address is going to be public, so anyone can see it. Minter. Now the minter, like I said before in the last video, the minter is someone who actually deploys the contract. So similar to for security issues we kind of want to make sure that no one else can run our contract, right? Because then they'd have the ability of changing things up and doing things that we may not agree with. And so, again, like I said, heads up, it's going to be the address of the contract creator who can mint the tokens. Now, you actually get more of a visual aspect when we actually deploy this contract and such. Now, since we have that minter, we're also going to kind of create a value for the total supply. So it's the total supply of the actual token that we are creating. And like I said, I'm just going to add these notes inside here, which will be the total supply of the tokens in circulation. Now we also have mapping. The mapping is going to be super important. It's basically used as a dictionary in Solidity, and very popularly used. Will always be used for being able to really hold, like this one's going to be in terms of addresses for an amount, and we're going to say that it's going to be wallet balances. All right, and like I said before, mapping is using all these addresses for their respective wallets. There you go. All right, now we're going to basically use a struct. And what a struct is it's a way of representing an object for token. So, being able to represent, and I almost kind of like to say the example of like making an attribute, because being able to, this is popularly used for polling and such. I don't know how familiar you guys, again, like I said, are with a lot of the smart contracts for either polling or voting or being able to create. But these are kind of like the basics that you generally use. And I strongly advise someone, whoever's kind of trying to get more into this to be very popularly well understood with structs. Now, basically, like I said, they're kind of like a good way of like thinking about it is like creating an attribute. So we're going to create the string. That's what it's going to be, and it's going to be the symbol. Now, this symbol, like I said, is going to be of the token we are actually designing. Don't be confused on that. Now we have also the amount, and it's going to be the amount of the actual token that we are, again, building. Now, I also really like to put this inside here. I'm going to make a timestamp, and it's just going to be of the actual original purchase. Sometimes it's super important, I think, just to emphasize that when exactly things are being used. I think it's a popular and a well-known idea that it could be just super important to be able to have it data, being able to actually show that this is when it's the contract was deployed or when a function was used. And now we're also going to create is an event. An event is a way of showing like some sort of a transfer from one token to another. This is the example that I'm going to use it for. There are other ways of using this. Again, like I said, it's the cool part with a lot of the code stuff is it's going to be really kind of like based on how you think things can be used. You can be, as creative as you want. And then we're going to also create from the address. So an address of the person, so the person who's going to be originally sending it. So in the grand scheme of things, it's going to be of the messenger.sender in this perspective. Again, things may be a little different for other contracts. And then we have its to, so from the address sending to the address that you're actually going to send it to. And now the amount. All right. And now eventually at the end of our contract or somewhere in one of these functions, we're going to be using this as a way to basically just emit is how you use events. So you admit the actual transaction to be able to allow it to be used in your functions. So now we're going to also create is a token, and we're going to create an empty array, and we're going to use the token that we had used above right here as a struct to use those as the objects that will be used for them. So I have an array to be created for all of the tokens. Now we're going to create a constructor, and again, like I said, if you guys have seen the last video, con structor, the constructor is going to be used when after whoever the minter is, because this is how we're going to basically be using it for. But for the minter, equal to the msg.sender. Now the msg.sender is a global variable. It is popularly used for whoever deploys the contract generally. There is an msg.value also. Again, like I said, would recommend to popularly be checking these ones out to making sure that you understand. But when we use this, we're going to be using the idea of a constructor, which is used when you deploy the contract. So now, the second I deploy the contract, I'm using the idea of the minter, who's the person who can actually use this address. So the address that you actually originally deploy the contract with, whoever that will be identified as the creator and will be the most trusted to actually transfer or use any of these functions. So now, the second that I actually deploy the contract, the minter will equal to the msg.sender. That's why the constructor is actually even used. All right, now we're going to be able to create our own functions. Now, the function is going to be called, we're going to call it mint, and we're going to call it for the total supply. Oh, sorry. Y. There we go. We're going to call it a public function. Now we're going to break down what we're going to be using. So since we have identified up here what the constructor is, saying that the minter is equal to the msg.sender, we want to basically use that no one else can use this function unless the minter is equal to the msg.sender. Because like I said, we don't want to be having random people using our functions. And you're going to say you are not the minter. It's a way of putting that bad boy out. Now, this just basically means only the minter can use this function. No one else can. Now, what we're also going to do is create another. Some of these things we're going to basically want to use for, again, security, basically almost always for when you use the require function. It can be also things that just don't make sense, like exactly like this idea right here. For this total supply, we want it to be greater than 0, right? Because that wouldn't really make very much sense if, I say, oh, well, let's go ahead and put something, let's transfer money, it's going to be, the total supply is going to be equal to 0. That doesn't really make too much sense. But we're going to say that the total supply must equal more than 0. And like I said, total supply must be greater than 0. It's almost like a sanity check in a way too, that they just cannot start making up random things. Okay, now what we basically have is we're going to get to more of the nitty gritty. So sometimes what happens is when you make these state variables up here, sometimes they're really just used to help identify, to move, use some attributes from one function to be able to allow them to another function. So like one right now I'm going to basically say is the total supply, which is right up here, is also going to be equal to ly, that the total supply is going to be equal to the underscore total supply. And so basically what this means is, right, this variable up here now can be publicly used in the actual contract, not specifically in the only function. So now when I put in the total amount, it will now be able to actually show, hey, this is going to be used as a variable. So later on, when I use it into another function, I can actually grab and take from it. And we're just going to set the total supply. All right, so now what we're going to use is we're going to use that mapping tool. And we're basically going to assign the total supply to the minter's wallet. So we have that balance, we have the wallet balance, which is the mapping right up here. Again, sometimes this can get a little confusing when you're kind of like still getting new into this and don't remember what kind of state variables you had used before. So I'm going to say that the wallet that we have, which is going to be in that empty array of, like I said, uses a dictionary, is going to be identified as the messenger.senders. Now, what I'm going to basically say is, well, that wallet should equal to the total supply. Now I'm assigning, like I said, the total supply to the minter's wallet. So now it actually is being used and makes actually sense. That's one of our functions right now. We're going to have another function. This function is going to be the transfer function. First off, we're going to be able to write an address, and it's going to be to, so the person that I'm actually sending this amount to, and how much. I always like to put, when I put like any parameters inside of a function, I always like to put the underscore. Sometimes it's just the best way of identifying it. It's just kind of like a rule of thumb that I normally do. So I'm going to put a public function. All right, let's go ahead and start writing this out. So first off, like I said, we're always going to kind of need some sort of security stuff. First off, we want to basically make sure that the recipient's address must be valid. So we're going to say _2 cannot equal to the address 0. And I'm going to have some sort of a error message, and it's going to say invalid. Oops. Invalid address. Close this off, semicolon. Let's go ahead and add our note inside here. All right. Same thing. We're add some more security. So we have to say basically now that the amount has to be greater than 0. Again, I'm not going to do too much because since I actually already know this is right here, I'm just going to copy and paste it to make it easy on ourselves. All right, we have one last one to put down, which that I can think of. Now, obviously, you're going to see some of this code and be able to actually change a lot more into your own thoughts and what you think that might be a little easier to put in. But we're going to say also the wallet of the balances that we put in before for the msg.sender. Again, like we put, a little different now, has to be greater than or equal to the underscore amount, because you cannot take money out of thin air, right? I mean, you don't get to say, oh, well, the total amount, yeah, but I want to bring out some arbitrary number. No, it doesn't work like that. Sorry, not correct amount from total. So that's just from the total balance. That means basically the sender must have enough to be able to even of the balance to be able to transfer. Oops. Oh, there we go. Clean that up real quick. Okay. All right, let's start working on the code now. So we have now the wallet, and we're going to take it from, remember again, like the same thing we've been doing. So now when I transfer over any of this function, which I'm going to do at the end, I want to be able to know that the amount that I have that I send over has to be deducted, right? Because that wouldn't make any sense if I send the amount of money, but the amount of money doesn't get deducted from the account that I'm actually sending it to. Right, so from my account being the person who deploys it, quote unquote, the minter, it will be that amount of money will decrease. And now we're also going to have another one, wallet balance. And we're going to say the _2. Similarly, we're going to also say greater than, or plus equal. So we're going to add that underscore amount. Again, like I said, this one will be just adding the amount to the recipient's wallet. Clean that up a little bit. All right. Now, finally, we are going to admit this function. We're going to call it the transfer function because we're used from when we had the event up here. So we're going to take exactly what we said, right, from an address to and the amount. So I've identified that I'm emitting this event up here by calling the transfer, right, event, or transaction, sorry, event up here. So where is it going to come from? It's going to come from the message.sender. Where is it going to? It's going to go to the _2, which has been the parameter up here. Who am I actually sending this to? And the underscore amount. Perfect. Now, like I said, this was emitting the actual transfer function. Or event, sorry. I should not say function because we're emitting a event. Now, let's see if this works. Control S. Oh, there's something wrong. Okay. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Let's make this easy. There we go. All right, it's cleaned up. Perfect. Let's get this thing rolling. So just make sure. Okay, so like we said before, who is the minter? The minter is going to be the person who deploys the contract. So if I click this bad boy right here, it should say deploy. Bang. All right, so the person who deployed it would be EDDC4. Now we can check that real quick. EDDC4. Perfect. Perfect, perfect. That's a good sign. Okay. So let's just kind of look through in each of these and let's say what are we actually trying to look at. So, right, so obviously I can't use a transfer function without having a total supply. So the total supply, just so everyone is familiar, if I put in normally everything inside comes from we, and we is going to be the first digit plus 18 zeros to be 1 Ethereum. That's the actual conversion. So I'm not going to actually use that actually as the idea, but in general, just so you guys know, we're going to use just a simple number. So 100. Okay, so now let's just see, does this work? It did. It's a good thing. Check mark right there. We can see the total supply is 100. Now we're going to basically say, first off, who am I sending this to? So remember, let's just take this example because I want it to not work real quick so I can show you as an example, right? If I were to say, this is where I'm going to send it to. If I get this off from technically, quote unquote, the minter, and I just say 10, I transact this, it's not going to work, right? Because it says right here, first off, total amount of the total not correct amount of from the total, and also that was the one above there, but this also won't work because you're not the minter, right? The person who needs to actually be sending this is the person who will be the EDDC4. So if I send this right now and transact it, it will work. Perfect. And we can see right now it's been transferred and has 10. So let's go ahead and we can figure out number one, what's the total supply. So remember just up here, we did use the minter to be able to say how much total supply is. If I click on this, it should be 100. So looks perfect. Now let's see if the transfer actually worked, right? We saw that it did by having the check mark, but let's go see real quickly by taking this address right here, and clicking inside right here and transacting it. Let's see, and hit 10. So we transferred that over. All right, it looks like everything is working. All right. All right, so I think that's it. I hope everyone used this and could learn a ton. And if they have any questions, feel free to go ahead and shoot it inside the comments. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.